Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of UpTalk by the Confident Communicator. I'm Deeksha, and today we're going to be talking to three high school students who are graduating this year about the pandemic, how it's affected their lives, and what their future is going to look like. I'm so excited for you to hear it, and I'm excited to hear what you think. So I am here with three 12th graders who are about to be graduating this year. Can you all introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, sure. My name is Avichal and I'm graduating 12th grade from Greenwood High IB.
My name's Alekhya, and I am also graduating from the Greenwood High IB program.
My name is Shruti, and I graduated AKYA with the CBSE program.
So, Shruti, you did CBSE. How
Yes.
did the lockdown affect your exams, and how did it affect your future plans?
So actually, I took PCMB. So by the time the lockdown was in place, all my exams were over. But I have a bunch of friends who still have some board exams left, so they're kind of caught in that entire mess. But for me, it was all done, and I've heard that even the papers are graded. And the college that I wanted to get into was an interview-based college, so there was no entrance exam, so that's also sorted. So I kind of lucked out.
Mm-hmm. What about both of you?
Well, our board exams just got cancelled on the spot, so they were supposed to be in May. Our last board exam was supposed to be sometime this week, but everything's been cancelled. So yeah.
So how has this affected your education of late so far? I mean, everything's moved online. I don't know if you've had classes or anything. Like for me, at least, all of our classes were suddenly in like Zoom meetings, and people were all right with not attending because in writing, especially, I'm doing creative writing in university, and you need to sort of be present with other people and discuss, and you just sort of can't do that over Zoom. So how did it affect all of you?
Well, I take courses online right now because I don't have much else to do. And it's really interesting because it's a pre-recorded program and it's from Harvard actually. So I think there's a lot of resources for teenagers and anyone really on the internet. And I think now, especially because the lockdown is in 2020, there's a lot of things that we can do with the internet. So it isn't that bad.
Mm-hmm. What about?
Similar to Shruti, I'm doing a Harvard X program as well on edX. It's so since we're moving to the US, for college, me and Avichal, like I decided, especially since I want to go into, I want to research things that are more political from the American standpoint. I'm doing one on public policy, but I definitely think that we did have a week of online classes before there was any definitive stance taken about our examinations. And a lot of the times, so ours took place on Microsoft Teams, and a lot of the times we'd join in, we had to mute ourselves and turn off video anyway because the teachers would be talking. And simultaneously, someone would send a link to play like a game online with a bunch of people, and we'd all go join there and like play that game. Which is like in hindsight, I'm sitting back and thinking about how disrespectful that was because these teachers are also taking time out of their day to teach us. But I feel like this quarantine has very effectively either nurtured or destroyed our work ethic. Like I know that my sleeping habits and everything have become so much more dysfunctional now than they were 3 months ago. So I definitely do think that this quarantine has personally maybe hindered my work ethic because I'm really working through at snail's pace to get through this course, even though it's very fascinating, simply because I no longer have that drive to finish things up as quickly.
So I feel like now a little bad that I'm the only one not taking a course from Harvard in this lockdown. But no, I'm taking an online internship with a company which is helping me work on a lot of coding skills because I want to do computer science. So it's really helped me, and it's really not messed with my schedule because the timing is like 8 to 8, so I have to be available for calls in the morning or in the night. So my sleeping schedule hasn't been that badly affected, as well as I've learned how to work in, say, quote unquote corporate environment, even though it's really not. one where you go to the office, but it's still one where you have to learn how to be on time. If 9 o'clock is the meeting, you have to be ready at 8:55. So it's really, I think it might have helped my work ethic to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think like as the lockdown and the quarantine has especially given people a chance to sort of work on things they wouldn't have otherwise. But then it also, on the other hand, has brought about the sort of issue of stagnation where when you're in one room all day or in one house and you just sort of lose motivation, coming back to what Alekhya was talking about, which is, your cycles get messed up and you just don't really know how to deal with the whole day in front of you, knowing you're not really going to be able to move about it. So how have you been dealing with that? Has that affected your mental health or the way you feel like going into the future?
I think this is a luxury to us that, we should be grateful for. So I think in terms of mental health, I've really sat and been able to introspect and reflect and work on my mental health positively. Like, I no longer have the excuse of I'm too busy to work out or I'm too busy to work on XYZ project, because I'm not. Like, none of us are that busy, so I can't give myself these excuses anymore. So I've been working on myself positively, and I feel like there are so many ways. Obviously, like, I know that it's a really hard time, especially with people with OCDs or domestic violence, and my heart really goes out to people whose mental health and physical well-being might be compromised during these times. But I personally feel really grateful for the situation that I'm in.
I think though, like one thing, like seeing the whole country in a lockdown sort of situation has done, at least for me, or seeing the world, is just sort of made me aware of what's going on to different groups of people. Because I feel like growing up like with a secure home and a good education and all of that made me sort of in a bubble, and now I'm actually sort of actively trying to read the news or trying to find out
Right, yeah.
how I can contribute to people. And I just wanted to know, have any of you sort of felt the same thing in the course of the lockdown, just awareness or a need for awareness about what's going on around you? And if so, what have
Actually,
you been doing? Yeah.
I think regarding the lockdown, there's a lot of political debate going on, even in our own friend groups. Like, there's pro-lockdown, anti-lockdown, and that kind of stirs up a lot of conversation for me. So I have been more aware during these times.
I feel even relatively to myself that I've always known a little bit about what's happening, current affairs, what's going on. Though maybe this lockdown has made me like, okay, let's check the news for some updates, what's happening, who's saying what did Donald Trump say on Twitter, stuff like that. So it's just, I feel in that way made me more interested in the news, but I feel like I was always pretty up to date with current affairs.
I think especially with the lockdown, for me at least, like keeping up to date with the news is something my parents started calling me every day and encouraging me to do. And that's sort of a habit that I've built up over the course of like the last 2 months, like just trying to sort of be aware of what's happening politically around the world, trying to understand what different forms of difficulty people are going through. And that, I think, is something I'm going to take with me even after the lockdown ends, like just to sort of mindfulness about different spheres of the world. And that's something I'm really grateful to have at least nurtured right now. So has there been any habits that you've picked up during the lockdown, or any sort of qualities that you've sort of developed that you want to take with you after?
I feel like I've always, say needed someone or something to constantly keep me entertained, because I'm fairly well known for being a talkative person, so I generally need data stability. And so I generally I tend to surround myself with a lot of different people, and I feel like knowing the fact that, like I said earlier, social distancing is such a privilege, and knowing that I should stay at home, and I've been able to interact more with my family and strengthen those connections. I've been able to inculcate a good in terms of nutrition. I've stopped eating junk food as often, because it's such a hassle to go buy regular stuff, forget cookies and other forms of junk food. And I've created a fairly decent timeline of when I'm going to work out and when I'm going to do this, which I kind of put off earlier. So like definitely time management and figuring out when I do what is something that I want to take with me to college as well.
I think for me, the biggest thing is to cherish the time that I spend with people that I like really care about. So back when it was regular and I would meet friends, I would meet them all the time. I would go down once a week. I would play basketball with my friends every day, but that hasn't happened. So I've really learned that when I'm doing something, I should be completely exhausted, kind of live in the moment, and also cherish it and remember it, but focus on what I'm doing at the given point of time, and not to think about something else, because there's no point to that.
Yeah, I think that's something that, again, alongside that, it's like cherish the people that are really important to me. And that's also given me some time to think about who I want in my life and who I don't as well. Like, just why am I still putting in an effort talking to people that don't actively make me happy, or that I don't actively sort of depend on during like difficult times, or I'm scared to depend on. So I think like in terms of perception of the self as well, the lockdown's given people time to consider how they want to reach out, because everything is digital now and it's all dependent on technology, and obviously that comes with its own sort of efforts. So have you been feeling that as well, or is that just me? Is it like talking to people through a screen, for example, like while it is a good education model for to adjust to what's going on right now, it does get so tiring after a point, especially if it's hours on end. So what do you think about that?
I think I've definitely become a more private person, and I personally hate texting or calling or even video calling. I really don't like it. I prefer face to face conversation, and I really have narrowed down my friends because of that. Because there are people who understand that and some who don't, and it's really easy to establish boundaries right now, which I think is a good thing.
For me, I actually, I don't know. Like, I think I found the opposite. Like, I feel like because of this lockdown that's forced everyone into, say, social starvation mode, I have been able to reconnect with so many friends that I had missed or lost touch with. And, so I'll be like sleeping or something and I'll throw in my headphones and I'll call someone because it's so much more fun, doing the dishes or something. And I'm talking to them. So my mind's preoccupied and I don't think of it as a chore because I think of those hours as me calling XYZ person to catch up with them. And I found that even if it's video calling or just plain calling, I feel like I've become closer to people than I was when we were seeing each other face to face.
So how about your families? How have they sort of been affected by the quarantine and the virus? How have people who've had to travel out dealt with it, or has it been work from home all the way?
So both my parents are teachers, and they're conducting online classes all day, and it's really annoying because I hear children's voices the entire day. It's really annoying. But actually, surprisingly, I've developed a really strong connection with my dad this quarantine because we didn't really talk or hang out much. But today, literally, I painted with him, and it was really fun. I enjoyed that.
So I think like one final question that I'm just going to ask before we end this today's conversation is what do you think, what are the changes you think are going to continue to stick after the quarantine lifts and after the whole pandemic is over? What do you think the world's going to look like at the end of it, and where do you think you're going to be in it?
So I think, I don't know, I'm not going to get into like political or economic perspective, but more of an everyday perspective on how things are going to look. Like, incidentally, we were having this conversation in the car today and we were talking about buffets and how big of a deal they have been in and any middle class family. and how often, like end of the week you go to a buffet, and then now the prospect of touching the same ladle as another person, it's just kind of irks you. And I feel like this feeling of paranoia is something that will exist for a little while longer. The prospect of actually just going to a restaurant and keeping your hands on the table without constantly feeling like, you should be wearing your mask or not touching things. And I think that that's going to make people a lot more mindful. And I think thanks to the lockdown globally, people have realized the detriments of going out every day and what it's done to the environment. And hopefully that'll make people more environmentally conscious as well. And the third thing that I think has really, really, I don't know, been beneficial through the lockdown is people have understood their privilege. Like the people have been able to really realize how privileged they are to be in a situation in some of the better lights of the situation that this quarantine and lockdown has given to us. So I think people have become more mindful and more respectful to workers and daily wage earners.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alekhya. I do think that one thing, even though I don't want to get political, is that the governments would start planning in the future for situations like this, maybe looking at the healthcare industry, maybe looking at what would we do if something like this does happen. But mainly people are just going to try to be safer. Maybe paranoia is not the right word for it, but just wearing masks, using hand sanitizer, washing hands. But I think that eventually, after this is over, after some time, people will just go back to the way it was. And I mean, maybe that's just me being optimistic and really hoping for that. But I think that's what I think would happen.
It's so interesting to see people's perspectives outside your own experience, especially when it's something as big as a pandemic that affects people all across the world in different ways. Let me know what you think, and I'm excited to see you all next week.